Thanks, Minister. We move on to the opposition and Deputy Jim O'Callaghan. You're sharing time.
Cahir, I think those of us who are interested in community policing should watch carefully what has been happening in the United States. Recent events there reveal what occurs when there is a toxic relationship between a certain section of a community and its police officers. The brutal killing of Mr. George Floyd and the consequent protests, not only have they underlined the toxicity of the relationship that exists between certain groups in the United States and its police officers, but it also underlines the importance of having a police force that serves with the support and cooperation of the public it polices. Regrettably, in the United States, very significant numbers of the black community there look upon police officers as being members of an organisation that is committed to discrimination against them and oppression against them. I know that is not the case with the vast majority of police officers, but it is significant nonetheless. Fortunately, in Ireland, we don't have such a toxic relationship between An Garda Síochána and any members of the community that it polices. In fact, one of the noticeable features you will hear back from communities when you go to speak to them about policing in their area, whether it's in the flats in the inner city or in rural Ireland, is that they want to see more gardaí on the ground. They want to see more members of An Garda Síochána in their community. The reason for that is because in this country, An Garda Síochána is viewed as being a community police force that provides community policing. It is not viewed the same way as a police force in the United States is viewed, namely as being a law enforcement agency. I'm conscious that we as policymakers in this House, we need to be constantly vigilant and keep an eye on what's happening on policing in this country. Because as we know, the gardaí can change and public attitudes to the gardaí can change. I think it is extremely important that as our society changes, that An Garda Síochána changes with it. As our society becomes more diverse, I think it is very important that An Garda Síochána, if it's going to achieve success in community policing, also reflects that diversity. That's why it's so important that the Gardaí continue to recruit from different races and that they continue to recruit from all socio-economic backgrounds. Diversity in Ireland is happening, and it should also be happening within An Garda Síochána, whilst at the same time we as policymakers must ensure that the Gardaí continue to police by placing the principles of equality, diversity and respect at the forefront of their work. Of course, the problems in the United States go far beyond the toxicity of the relationship between certain black communities and certain police officers. The history of that country is overshadowed by issues such as slavery, segregation and racism, and there are issues too detailed to go into here. But I think it is fair to say that people who observed the civil rights movement in the United States, or indeed people who observed the great legislative achievements of President Lyndon Johnson as a president and indeed as a senator, will be extremely disappointed at the fact that in the 21st century the progress of black people in America has not attained where it should be. I think in Ireland, as I said at the outset, we also need to be conscious of racism in this country, and we need to be conscious that as a country we are hugely impacted by events that happen in the countries surrounding us. We are surrounded by a very large country to the west, another large country to the east, and we just have to be extremely careful that we do not allow to happen in this country the polarisation of politics that has occurred in the United States, in the United Kingdom, and regrettably that has existed for decades in Northern Ireland. The purpose of polarisation in politics is to divide people into different antagonistic groups through the presentation to them of the fact that their issues can only be resolved by affiliation to one political group. What polarisation seeks to do is it seeks to say to people that don't look at the substance of a political issue, but instead you should just affiliate yourself with a particular group, and anyone outside that group is antagonistic to your interests and should be opposed. I hope we're not going to see that fragmentation of politics happening in Ireland. I think we all as politicians have a responsibility to ensure that we confront racism where it exists in Ireland, and it does exist. And we also need to ensure that we don't facilitate polarisation, because one of the negative consequences, one of the extremely negative consequences of polarisation is that it allows the extremes to flourish, and on the extremes are the racists. Thank you.